Hello, family. Hope that you're having a blessed day today. My name is Jermaine Felton, and today's reading will be continuing Genesis, the chapter 41, verses 28 to 57. In today's reading, we'll be reading about Joseph being made ruler of Egypt. With that being said, let's start today's reading. This will happen just as I described it, for God has revealed to Pharaoh in advance what he is about to do. The next 7 years will be a period of great prosperity throughout the land of Egypt. But afterward, there will be 7 years of famine, so great that all the prosperity will be forgotten in Egypt. Famine will destroy the land. This famine will be so severe that even the memory of the good years will be erased. As for having two similar dreams, it means that these events have been decreed by God, and He will soon make them happen. Therefore, Pharaoh should find an intelligent and wise man and put him in charge of the entire land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh should appoint a supervisor over the land and let them collect 1/5 of all crops during the 7 good years. Have them gather all the food produced in the good years that are just ahead and bring it to Pharaoh's storehouse. Store it away and guard it so there will be food in the cities. That way there will be enough to eat when the 7 years of famine come to the land of Egypt. Otherwise, this famine will destroy the land. Joseph's suggestion were well received by Pharaoh and his officials. So Pharaoh asked his officials, "Can we find anyone else like this man so obviously filled with the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has revealed the meaning of the dream to you, you clearly know one else is as intelligent or as wise as you are. You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I sitting on my throne will have a rank higher than yours." So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh moved his signet ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in fine linen clothing and hung a gold chain around his neck. Then he had Joseph ride in the chariot reserved for his second in command, and wherever Joseph went, the command was shouted, "Kneel down." So Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all Egypt. So we see here in verse 38 that Pharaoh recognized that Joseph was a man filled with the Spirit of God. You probably won't get to interpret dreams for a king, but those who know you should be able to see God in you through your kind of words, merciful acts, and wise advice. I ask you this question. Do your relatives, neighbors, co-workers see you as a person in whom the Spirit of God lives? That's the question we should ask ourselves. And then verse 39 and 40, Joseph rose quickly to the top, from prison walls to Pharaoh's palace. His training for this important position involved being first a slave, then a prisoner. In each situation, he learned the importance of serving God and others. Whatever your situation is, no matter how undesirable, consider it part of training a program for serving God. Let's continue. And Pharaoh said to him, "I am Pharaoh, but no one will lift a hand or foot in the entire land of Egypt without your approval." Then Pharaoh gave Joseph a new Egyptian name, Zephathah. He also gave him a wife whose name was Asna. She was the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On. So Joseph took charge of the entire land of Egypt. He was 30 years old when he began serving in the court of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And when Joseph left Pharaoh's presence, he inspected the entire land of Egypt. As predicted, for 7 years, the land produced bumper crops. During those years, Joseph gathered all the crops down in Egypt and stored the grain from the surrounding fields in the cities. He piled up huge amounts of grains like stands on the seashore. Finally, he stopped keeping records because there was too much to measure. During this time, before the first of the famine years, two sons were born to Joseph and his wife, Esna, the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On. Joseph named his oldest son Manasseh, For he said, God has made me forget all my troubles and everyone in my father's family. Joseph named his second son Ephraim, for he said, God has made me fruitful in this land of my grief. At last, the 7 years of bumper crops throughout the land of Egypt came to an end. Then the 7 years of famine began. Just as Joseph had predicted, the famine also struck all the surrounding countries. But throughout Egypt there was plenty of food. Eventually, however, the famine spread throughout the land of Egypt as well. And when the people cried to Pharaoh for food, he told them, Go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you. So with severe famine everywhere, Joseph opened up to the storehouse and distributed grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout the land of Egypt. And the people from all around came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe throughout the world. And we see here in verse 54 that famine was a catastrophe because ancient people relied almost exclusively on their own crops for food. Almost perfect conditions were needed to produce good crops because there were no chemical fertilizers or pesticides. Any variance in rainfall instead of insect activity could cause crop failure and great hunger. Lack of storage, refrigeration, or transportation turned a moderate famine into a desperate situation. The famine Joseph prepared for was especially severe because 7 years of famine came one right after the other. Without God's intervention, the Egyptian nation would have crumbled. And that's where we'll end today. And I hope that today's reading helped you out today. I hope that you read it with yourself, get a better understanding, and I pray that you have a blessed day. Have a blessed day, brothers and sisters.